Dan in Macomb, Ohio. Hey, Dan, what's up? You want to talk about Florida redistricting?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
I'm great.
I was actually great. I'm just new. I'm a new resident to Ohio, and I moved here from Florida after living there for 10.5 years. And after reading the news report from the Associated Press about what's going on with that a circuit judge ruled that the Florida redistricting was deemed illegal. I'm wanting to know what your take on the matter is, especially given the two districts that are in question. One would be District 3 with Corinne Brown, and the other one, I believe, is District 8 with Daniel Webster. Being that I used to work for OFA in 2012 and actually working actively with these districts as well, I can tell you right now, where I used to live in Florida, our congressman was Bill Posey, and he actually, one time I met him, and he actually made the comment, because I asked him, I said, what are the chances that the Democrats could take back the majority of the seats? And he said, not a chance in hell.
Right, because of redistricting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. This is a plague all across our country, and it has been for 200 years. It's gotten worse in the age of computerization. They're now drawing districts where they're able to get demographic information and even voter information that's so granular that they can include individual houses, or individual streets, part of a street and not part of a street into a district to create safe Republican and safe Democratic districts. Both parties have done this. In 2010, the Republicans made a huge effort because every year that ends with 0, for people who don't know what we're talking about here, the Constitution says that every 10 years, every year that ends in a 0, so it's 10 times every century, the census will be taken. And then based on that census, the number of members of the House of Representatives has to be basically nationally consistent and representative. So every person in the House of Representatives represents roughly the same number of people. In the original Constitution, I think it was something like 300,000 or something. There was actually a number there, but they've that's kind of been blown by. But the point is that as population grows in individual states or shrinks, those states have to increase or decrease the number of representatives, and thus they have to change the borders of the congressional districts. This is called redistricting. And that was the original intent, was simply to make sure that as states got larger or smaller relative to each other, that every member of Congress was always representing roughly the same number of people. So it was a body of equals, essentially. And the people were well represented, were equally represented. Now, where it got political was when the political parties emerged after the election of 1800, and the political parties started getting very, very partisan and started using the opportunity of redistricting to redraw the districts. And I think it was in the 1820s or 1830s, Mr. Gerry, thus gerrymandering, as in salamander, drew a congressional district, I believe it was in New Jersey, I could be wrong, that looked like a salamander, and so they called it gerrymandering. And what it was let's create a district where we know that the guys who will vote for me are all in this district, and the guys who won't vote for me are out of the district, they're in somebody else's district. And that's why we have a 96 or 97 or 98% incumbent reelection rate in the United States. There's really only 20 or 30 districts that are in play in the entire country. All the rest of them have been either have been redrawn in ways that are entirely Democratic or entirely Republican. So what this judge ruled in this Florida case was that in the 2010 redistricting in Florida, that you're supposed to redistrict to the good of the country, to the good of equal representation, not to the good of a political party. At least in Florida, and I believe it's a federal law, but I could be wrong on this. Say what, Shane? Yeah, okay, it's a Florida Constitution. The Florida Constitution says that you have to consider the good of the state, not the good of your party first. And what this judge ruled is that the Republican Party had coordinated with the legislature that was redrawing the districts in a way that was entirely partisan. And so he's saying these districts were illegally redrawn. But this is a national problem. There are some states where there's no law against it. There's other states where it's slightly regulated. California changed, I believe, how they determine who is doing the districts. They have a commission now that's a certain number of Democrats, a certain number of Republicans, a certain number of independents, and the result of that, the consequence of that, has been that California's districts are more representative of the state than pretty much anywhere else in the country, I guess. But I think that we should pass a federal law or even an amendment to the Constitution that says that congressional districts have to be polygons. They have to be as close to a circle or a square as possible, and that, given the geography of the state and what they abut, and that, they're basically drawn by computer. I mean, we can do that now. And that there's no partisan intent whatsoever. Then you would have congressional elections where, 20, 30, 40% of members of Congress would be flipping every 2 years because people would actually be voting for people based on their records rather than their party affiliation. Am I making sense, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will also tell you, I mean, when you look at, I'll give you Corinne Brown's district, for example. You look at District 3, Corinne Brown covers pretty much everywhere from Jacksonville to Orlando, but it looks like a snake.
Yeah, or a worm.
And you can absolutely, absolutely. And you can tell, if they were to do it the way that you're stating, I guarantee you that they would, the representation at least within the state of Florida, and I'm sure other states as well, as you said, would drastically change.
Yes,
be a little more even.
It would, and you would see the House of Representatives. I mean, more than in the last election, more than 500,000 people voted in favor of Democratic members of the House than voted for Republican members of the House. So nationwide, House of Representatives races, 500,000 more votes for Democrats than Republicans. So you would think that there would be more Democrats than Republicans in the House of Representatives, but there aren't, because Republicans were successful particularly in the election of 2010, but also in 2000 in many states. They were successful in very strategic redistricting, and thus they have this institutional preference for Republicans. These districts that are always going to go Republican simply because of the way that they were drawn. And the other thing that they did is they also tried to push many of the Democratic districts, abut them with black districts, so that more and more of the Democratic members of Congress were people of color, on the assumption that that would cause white Southern racists to think that if somebody is black, they must be a Democrat, or that the Democrats are the people who are always supportive of people who are people of color, and basically activate the racist base. And they have had some considerable success in doing that. And this whole thing it's not good for America. It's good for the Republican Party, I guess, arguably, but it's not good for America. So, Dan, thanks for the call.